So it's a lovely, glorious sunny day, and I thought I'd bring the other beastie out for a run round today. So it's the first Harley I've ever had, and I have to say I quite like it. So I kind of reached that stage of life, I guess. So I figured today we might take a ride down to the coast, head down to Weymouth or West Bay, pick up some fish and chips, and then meander my way back up. So I figured, we'll head out to the A30, head out towards Shaftesbury, Sherborne, and then we'll take a left there, start heading down towards Dorchester Way, pick up the A37, or it might be the 35, can't remember, and head on down towards West Bay. Hopefully it won't be too busy, and the fish and chip shops is open. Grab something to eat, have a look at the sea, and then meander my way back. And it's a lovely day for it. Beautiful sunny weather, and it's good for your soul. So this is the first time I've tried any kind of moto vlog on the Harley. So I'm not quite sure how this is going to work out, especially with the camera on the handlebars. It seems to be picking up an awful lot of vibration. But once we're up to speed it might be okay. I'll leave it running, see how it looks. But I think all the slow speed stuff and heading through traffic, it's going to pick up an awful lot of vibration. And I'm not sure my old GoPro 3s are good enough to cancel all that out, but we'll see. It looks steady enough at the moment. Did he even open his eyes? He's going to drop in and gas up. Let's see. There's M-Tech, great bunch of guys. If you've got a Volkswagen, Audi, Seat or anything along those lines, that's the place to take it. Adam and Paul, they'll definitely sort you out. Now up here is a pub that I've always meant to go in. I've never been there. It's the Tippling Philosopher. So one day I'll catch the train down and we'll go and check it out. Yeah. So maybe I ought to tell you a bit about what I'm riding today. So this is my Harley Sportster. It's XL, was an 883R, it's now a 1200R. I've had it for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years maybe, 4 years I think. Up until this point I always had Kawasaki's. You know, I was almost like flipping lime green blood, I think. I've had everything from a Z250 to a Z1000 and everything in between. And I just got to the stage where I got fed up with shims under the buckets, balancing 4 carbs, and all those other complications that come with a 4-cylinder engine, you know. I mean, those Kawasaki's were great. They carried for me for tens of thousands of miles, and they were all pretty reliable. Never really had any serious trouble with them, and the Z1000 especially, that was tuned, you know, 1075 big bore kit and lots of other goodies, and it never missed a beat. They were brilliant, but they were quite labour intensive, and I just fancied something that was much simpler to look after. So I thought, well, I'll go and test drive a Harley. Never ridden one. And I went and test drove a brand new iron, so that would have been in about 2016 or 2015, up at Cheltenham Harley Davidson. Took the bike out for a couple hours, and I really enjoyed riding it. But the 883 in standard form it's pretty wheezy, you know. So from talking to the salesman, I decided, you know, okay, the 883 is definitely a non-starter, but I'll go for the 1200 engine, you know, because the difference is night and day. And being an old school kind of mechanic, I tended to shy away from the fuel injection really, so I looked for the last of the 06, or the last of the carburettor Sportsters, which is what this one is. So it's a 2006, last year of the carburettor, but it's a bit of a hybrid model. So the electronic ignition is kind of a halfway house between a full engine control unit with fuel injection and the old style electronic ignition, which is a bit of a shame because it's totally non-adjustable. You can only program it, you know, or reprogram it. I mean, so far it's got a little bit of a tendency for pinking on a really hot day, even when I run it on super unleaded. But apparently it is dealer programmable, so I might one day see if they can knock a couple of degrees off the advance, you know, just to stop it pinking so much or at all. I mean, today it's 70 degrees, and I haven't heard a single tinkle. So you know, it's only when it gets really hot. It's a bit wiggly here. But you know, the difference between an 883 and a 1200 is unbelievable. You know, it's almost like you've got twice as much torque, twice as much power, kind of everywhere. So if you're looking at a Sportster, definitely the 1200. You know, definitely go for the 1200. There's a few other mods you can do to the 883 to, you know, to liven them up a bit. I mean, this one's got an aftermarket carburettor on it. It's HSR 42, so it's much bigger. It's a flat slide with a fuel pump, you know, accelerator pump, which helps it breathe a lot better. It's running a K&N, and you know, as usual, short shots. They seem to be de rigueur on the Sportster pretty much, you know. And it's one of those bikes you can, I mean, you know, it will do hardly able ton, as they say, but it will do over a ton. You just got to be prepared to hold on to it. And this day and age, I decided with all the cameras about and everything else, it's just not worth it. So I went to a bike that feels like you're riding it fast rather than one you actually are riding it fast, if that kind of makes sense. And it's got tons of torque. You know, you can shove it, you know, you look at it here, 2000 revs, and it will just pull cleanly straight from that. It makes it a really relaxed, easy bike to ride. And they don't vibrate as much as people said, despite what the camera's wibbling about on the handlebars. You know, you've got to, I guess it's a bit like the Himalayan, you've got to take it for what it is. It's quite a agricultural design, I guess is the word. You know, the gear change isn't Japanese slick at all, but it is positive. You know, you definitely know when you're changing gear, and with all that torque on in the engine, you can, even at this speed, you can pull cleanly in top, no problem. Makes it a very easy bike to ride, and despite the weight, once you're moving, you know, it's nice low centre of gravity, handles reasonably well, not like a Japanese sports bike, but it feels kind of planted on the road. I mean, the only sort of what modifications have I made to it since I've had it, I guess. I fitted the K&N filter, mainly because I didn't like the huge chromed sardine can sort of effect filter that was on there from standard, and that's it. That's the only changes I've made to it. I already had the 1200 kit fitted when I bought it. I wasn't necessarily looking for an orange one. I preferred it in black, but hey, this had all the engine mods and everything else, so I thought, oh, what the hell, the colour will grow on me, and it kind of has. And on that note, one of the things I have changed is the rear mudguard for a shorty, because the standard mudguard just looks awful. So now it's got the back end is cut fairly well back, and we're running a side plate rather than a poster size number plate on the rear mudguard. Fitted the little nose cone fairing, takes a bit of wind off, not too much, but that's more for looks than anything else. And other than that, it's pretty much, you know, standard. As far as comfort and handling goes, I've changed the seat for a Mustang Solo, and that is super comfy. You know, you can ride all day, whereas the standard seat was super uncomfy. That was crap. But I guess the guy I bought it from, I don't think he did any long distance on it, so the first time I rode sort of 200 miles on it, I was crippled. So something had to give. From looking online, it seemed like the Mustang had a really good rep. Everyone said they were comfortable, so that's what I went with. And standard shocks, changed those for a set of Hagons, and I have to say, Hagons were flipping brilliant. I measured up the shocks I want, they built them exactly as I wanted them, got them back to the bike, and then the drive belt was fouling the rear master cylinder linkage. So I phoned them up, and they changed them all at cost. All I had to do was cover the postage there and back, and they changed them to the new specs. No problem at all. They were absolutely brilliant, fantastic customer service, and the shocks themselves, they're great. You know, they really transform the handling. It makes you realise how the standard shock absorbers are just pogo sticks. You know, these Hagon ones, they're comfy, but they haven't got the horrible pogo effect. You know, the damping is much better, so consequently the handling's better, and where it's lifted the rear end a bit, you know, it seems to have quickened up the steering a tad. But you know, it's just transformed the bike into something that's really, really pleasurable to ride. Not quite as easy to ride as the Himalayan, but you know, you could do some serious distance on this, and it's reasonably frugal on fuel. I mean, I'm tootling along like this, you know, you'll be getting 70 plus to the gallon. And get it out on the motorway, you know, hacking along at 70-80 miles an hour, you're still doing 50-60 to the gallon. So, you know, it's reasonably good on fuel, which is good, because the tank, I mean, this is the mid-size tank. It's a 3.3 gallon, but that's US gallon, so that's 44 litres to the gallon. You know, range about 130 miles, depending on how you're riding. It could be as low as sort of 115, 120 if you're high speed, and I have managed to almost eke it up to 150 when I'm stuck behind people like this, you know. Because I've been gassing, we've just been tootling along through the lovely Dorset countryside, admiring the back of this Land Rover, which perhaps we really ought to think about getting past, but hey. So after all that meandering, you know, would I recommend a Sportster? Yeah. You know, like most bikes, if you want to get it the way you want it, you've got to be prepared to spend a bit. So far, the maintenance on it has been pretty easy. I've had to rebuild the front master cylinder because it was sticking, not because it was leaking. And it was literally just a case, take it apart, clean it out and reassemble it, bleed it through with new fluid, and it's been okay. Other than that, I'm not sure what other issues I had. I had a slight oil leak from the clutch cable where it goes into the bottom of the transfer case. But again, there was no parts, it was just strip it apart, clean it all, bit of silicone sealant, put it back together, and it's good. You know, there's a slight weep on one of the rocker cover gaskets, but it is only slight, so I'm just monitoring that for the time being. As far as servicing it goes, you know, it's electronic ignition, there's nothing to adjust there, no points, so it's 2 spark plugs. Just make sure your manifold seals are all good, and change the oil. You know, there's no, the tappets are hydraulic, so there's nothing to adjust there. Just use a decent quality oil, and it's cartridge spin on and off filter, so you know there's hardly any disassembly. Servicing it is a doddle. Just pop the calipers off, give them a good clean, you know, clean up all the pads, but servicing it's a breeze. You know, a lot of people question about the belt drive. Well, I've done, since I've had it in the 4 years, I haven't done that many miles actually. You know, I've done probably, I don't know, about 4,000 miles on it. I haven't had to adjust the belt once. I haven't had to touch it. It hasn't stretched or anything. You don't put any kind of treatment or anything on them. As long as you know, the wheel is aligned properly, and you know, you don't. I've had no trouble with it. I've no idea how old the belt is. I'm assuming it's the original one. Who knows? I've seen people on the forums. Some people manage to get through a belt in 2,000 or 3,000 miles and they snap it. Other people, they're saying they've got 60, 70,000 miles on the belt and it's still going. I guess it's all down to how you ride the bike, how it's maintained and everything else. You know. But so far the belt drive is maintenance free. There's no dirt. It's not like a chain. It doesn't flick chain lube all around the wheel and the mud guard, so it's quite clean. You know, I get that it's not as efficient as a chain drive, but so far it takes a lot of the snatch out of the transmission, and it's been great. I'm just not looking forward to the day when it does eventually snap or give up, as they ain't cheap. But having said that, you know, if it lasts 2 or 3 times, as long as a set of chain and sprockets, maybe, you know, that's not so bad. Just always a bit mindful, you know, when you come across a piece of road that's just been resurfaced and you've got all that sort of fine gravel over it, what that's kind of doing to the belt. You know, if that gets in there, I'll just chew it to bits. But you know, hey, c'est la vie. So I guess getting back to, would I recommend a Sportster? You know, you've got to decide, I guess, what kind of riding you want to do. You know, it isn't going to keep up with a sports bike, and it's nowhere near as nimble. But it's for plodding along. It's comfy. You know, and it's not a Honda, which is always a plus. It's been pretty reliable, and I wouldn't have too many qualms about, you know, taking it on a long trip somewhere. I think it'll be reasonably capable. Let's see what we've got. Let's see if we can get past these guys. That's better. Bit of open road in front of us. No, it is what it is. You know, there's a long heritage there. Sportsters have been about for a long time. There's loads of spares about. I mean, the only thing I will say is spares are quite expensive. You know, even the servicing items aren't too bad. But if you get into things like brake discs and stuff like that, they are quite expensive. And if it's a Harley only part, yeah, then be prepared. And so far the only genuine Harley parts I've bought is really oil filters, because they're quite competitive, you know, with the aftermarket stuff. And yeah, one issue I did have with it, the ignition pickup didn't pack up, fail completely. It just started messing about, and I was convinced it was a fueling problem, because it was giving those sorts of symptoms, you know, of it being starved of fuel. And so anyway, I pulled the carburetor apart, and the bonus being there's only one, but couldn't find anything wrong. And it just so happened I was talking to a guy at work who's also got a Sportster, and straight away he said, "Oh, that's your ignition pickup playing up." That's exactly what mine did. So after a bit of research on the forums, etc., then lo and behold, yeah, that's what it is. And apparently that's exactly the symptoms it gives, sort of fuel starvation. And so I had to go to Harley to order one, because that's the only place you can get it. It's 70 quid, but it cured it, and, you know, touch wood, it hasn't played up since. So I guess if you're pretty unlikely to get a fault like that on a Japanese bike, but you know, especially as it seems to be fairly common, because there's quite a lot of people talking about it on the forums. But hey, there we go. I think you still get issues, you know, no matter what make of bike you get. Probably less so with the Japanese stuff, but like I said, it's not a Honda. Well, I need to start paying attention to the road signs, because I'm not quite sure where we are now. We must be coming up on the A35, or is it A37 fairly soon. So, oh, right, here we go. A37 Yeovil Dorchester. Oh, right. So I think I need to go left.